And welcome to Future Eclipse second podcast. How you doing today, interwebs, and how you doing, Calvin?
Not too bad. You?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for getting kind of pounded with one of our first winter storms out here, I guess.
Oh yeah, apparently it's supposed to be 15 centimeters.
Yes, sir. We're gonna get. I'm gonna wake up to a big pile of snow on the ground. I
And
think
on
you
your
might have to
car.
grease up your snowshoes and walk to school in the morning. You know what I mean?
Yep. Get the sleigh dogs out.
That's right. Come on, Huskies, let's go! Woohoo! You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right.
Alright,
So
so what's
for
the topic of
today,
today?
what's that?
What's the topic of today?
All right. So before we get into our topic, I just want to mention to the audience that last week when we gave the introductory podcast, I only included half of my background. Um, there are things missing between my time at Earl March and the time I went to Toronto, which I'll get into in a future episode. Because we're trying to keep the podcast fairly short, which actually
Yeah.
brings up something Calvin and I have been discussing, and we know a lot of people aren't into listening to like majorly lengthy podcasts.
Yeah.
Our first one was 50 minutes, and a lot of people liked it, but some of the feedback we got was that it's too long.
Too much
So
information
yeah,
in
so
one
in the
video.
future, we will release the full podcast in its entirety to Spotify, our other platforms, YouTube. But then what we'll do is segment, if we're talking about multiple topics, we'll chop those topics up into segments and upload those segments individually.
Yeah.
All right, so it'll be easier for you guys to listen to, and plus it'll give us more views on our channel too, which kind of what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that. So for
Perfect.
today, Calvin, we're going to be discussing some things
Up.
that happened pre World War II, after World War II, and some of the technologies that the Nazis had. One of the things I didn't mention last week was that my grandfather on my mom's side. Now, the thing you have to understand about my mom's side is her mom remarried. So I basically have a grandfather removed, and I have my actual grandfather. So the grandfather I'm going to be speaking about today is the grandfather through my grandmother's new marriage. And his name is Jack Hicks. And Jack Hicks has a very interesting background. Unfortunately, he passed away about 10 years ago or so. But when he started working, when he was about 18, 19, he first started with the RCAF here in Canada, the Royal Canadian Air Force.
Right.
And like the US military and other military like the UK, they had a special operations unit, which Jack was a part of. And the really cool thing was pre World War II breaking out, Jack was dropped into German lines to do some reconnaissance to find out what was going on there at the time. Because there's definitely some weird stuff going on there, right, Calvin?
Oh yeah, for
Like some
sure.
majorly weird stuff.
Messed up too as well.
And what he found, I'll get into as the podcast progresses. But for now, we're going to talk about a bit of Hitler's background and then kind of take it from there. So, if you all don't know, Hitler was part of World War One. He was involved with all the trench warfare at that time. And really, it was the catalyst to what was to happen in the future.
Yeah.
He was very much into artifacts and the occult. If you guys have seen the Indiana Jones movies, Holy Grail. What was the first one again?
Uh, was that the? Oh, was that the jungle one?
No, that was the one where they found the big box there. What the heck? The Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Ark of the
Oh, that
Covenant,
was the
sorry.
third
That's
one, I
what I'm
think.
thinking of. Ark of the Covenant. Sorry,
There
audience.
you go.
Duh. So yeah, these kind of relics of power he was always interested in. So I guess he got himself involved in some of the secret societies or whatever in Germany, and also the surrounding companies. It was in Austria and wherever else too during that time. Germany, after losing World War One, was really in despair, and the people were demoralized, and they really wanted to rebuild their country to greatness, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So Hitler formed the Nazi Party, and eventually uh, came into power. And one of the ways that he did that was through propaganda.
Lots and lots of propaganda.
Yep, that's right. Whether it was in the newspapers or whatnot,
The radio.
they really started to affect people's thinking, like you see in the media today. The media coming out saying that Joe Biden is the clear winner of the 2020 U.S. election, which is false
Yeah, buddy.
because there's steps that they
Need to
have
be
to
taken
follow
place.
constitutionally in order to get that whole thing certified in the end.
That's right.
So now, some of you may or may not know that the Nazis were involved with one society in particular, the Vril Society, that a lady named Maria Orsic was a part of. And what she was doing was that she was channeling through telepathy plans and schematics to build out space vehicles. Okay, and we're pretty sure that was coming from the Nordic side, the Nordic ETs.
Yeah.
Now, through this kind of these secret societies, there was other people channeling as well, and somehow they came in contact with the Saurian or the Draco reptilians, which are still around today, by the way.
Everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah. Now, they have talked about these guys on documentaries such as Above Majestic. Uh, William Tompkins has talked about them too.
Yep.
You know, if you ever get a chance, you should really go watch his interviews with either Jordan Sather or there's I believe Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot also did the initial interview with him back when. So go check that out. It's a good watch. You'll learn a lot. And the Nazis were getting technology from this non-malevolent negative ET race.
Called Dracos.
That's right, or the Saurians. Now, the
Yeah.
Saurians kind of remove themselves from God in the sense that they're soulless. Okay,
So
because they
they're
didn't
like a
want to
husk.
follow the path of God, so they were stripped of that. And now the only way they can survive is feeding off something called loosh. And loosh is like negative energy
Negative
created,
energy.
yeah, created through fear or trauma, especially in smaller children. So this is why you saw all these Jewish concentration camps and work camps coming up, because the Saurians would like basically park their cloaked ships above there and they'd just be siphoning all this negative energy, right?
Yep.
And living off it. So in exchange for that, the Saurians came to a treaty with the Germans or the Nazis for technology.
Yeah.
So on one hand, you have the technology coming in for the Nordics through Maria Orsic, but you also have technology coming in from the Dracos. Okay, and I'm pretty sure that's the way it went. Just from my research, um, because initially when Maria Orsic channeled it, it was with the intent that she would leave Earth and go visit them on their world, wherever that would be. Okay, whereas the Draco agenda was a little different, as I already have said, right? And Calvin, what kind of technologies were the Nazis working with at that time?
I'd say low friction crafts, high speed, velocity, no sound, like beyond speeds you could believe that were possible back then.
Right. What actual things that we've seen did they come
Like
up with?
that we've seen ourselves.
Yeah. Like what were they working on?
Like the moon base they have there. Um, they've s- they've done the V2 rockets with the scientists there.
Yep.
Um, what else? What else? Shoot some stuff at me.
Well, they had some medical advancements they were working on too,
Right, right, right.
right?
Very advanced medical stuff because they were able to enslave people and not treat, but like test more efficiently. I guess you can kind of say.
Well, yeah. I mean, they were testing stuff on humans, which was actually a massive crimes against humanity type stuff. But
Yeah.
they were doing it, and yeah, there's also technology they were working on. Like they had all the crazy tank technology, armor technology for the tanks. Like look at the Tiger, for example, the Panzer
Was
IV.
the Sherman? The Sherman
No, the
wasn't part
Sherman
of that?
is the U.S. was the U.S. tank, and the reason they built the Shermans because they were cheap and they could build a lot of them. Right.
Oh,
That's why the U.S. went with that, which eventually got upgraded through time. I think the M4 is the last version of that thing. They had even like the Firefly, which had a big flamethrower at the front. You know.
I don't know much about tanks.
Yeah, and what else? They had the jet fighters they were working on, right?
Right, right,
The first jet fighters. They were working on the atom bomb.
right.
Things like this.
More
So
advanced super technologies.
yeah, and everybody was kind of like, "What the heck? Like, where are they getting this from? It doesn't make any sense." You know.
Yeah,
So this
exactly.
is where they were getting all that technology from was through the Draco Saurians, and a lot of it was being developed in underground bases. So
So
this is
they could
kind of
keep it a
where,
secret.
sorry,
So that they could keep it from a secret from the public.
exactly, out of sight, out of mind kind of concept, right?
Exactly.
So, so this is kind of where the story of my grandfather comes into play, which I'll tell you now. So my grandfather, like I had previously said, was part of a secret special ops group with the RCAF, and they were dropped into Germany pre World War II, and so what he found was actually pretty shocking. I was shocked when I first heard it, and I first heard it basically when he was on his deathbed. Okay, and but we had talked about it like years prior, and it came about because when my father passed away in 2003, a couple of days after my mom, sister, and I were all sitting at the family farm talking away, and at the time I was researching um, different theories to the ending of World War II because I never really believed that the Allies fully won the war with just kind of what was still going on the planet today. And the theory I was researching back then had to do with A, the Nazis had indeed developed the atom bomb already, and
Which is
B,
insane.
that they had surrounded the US with U boats loaded with nuclear weapons.
So that they could like control and get what they want from
Yeah,
U.S.
they basically tried to force the U.S.
Manipulated.
government into submission by saying either you do what we say or we're gonna like blow you out of the water, kind of deal.
Huge blackmail.
Yeah, and so when I was sharing that with my grandfather and mom and sister, my grandfather kind of piped up and he's like, "Well,
Something like that.
it's kind of like that, but not really." And I'm like, at this point, my curiosity's peaked. So I'm like, "What are you talking about, Jack?" And he's like, "Well, I can't really talk to you about it." And I'm like, "Really?" I was trying to push him and push him, but no, he definitely wouldn't say until he was on
Death.
his deathbed, and he told me that he didn't tell me because originally the group comprised of 6 individuals, and after the war and the group was disbanded and everybody left, 2 of the guys spoke about what he saw or what they saw, and they were killed. So he was always afraid that the same thing would happen to him, but because he was on his deathbed at that point, he didn't really care anymore. You know what I mean? So what he
Yeah.
saw was, I guess they had gotten some information from some local people about a base they were kind of freaked out about, the local people to Germany anyway. And so they had gone in and checked it out, and this base was kind of like through a forest and lodged into the side of a mountain. And outside the main door, the bay doors, there was like this kind of squarish tarmac. And on the tarmac, there was a round saucer shaped thing, which we would call a habnu, Haubenu. And there's different varieties of that, right up to Mark IV. And so when he and his partner had seen this, they were really astonished. They didn't know what the heck it was. And standing beside this thing is a 10 foot and then almost a 12 foot reptilian looking being. And he said that's what scared them the most, was seeing, like, you know, this alien standing there with like SS officers,
Yeah.
right?
That's some
That's like
scary
seeing
shit.
a new animal or whatever for the first time. It kind of has that shock value, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so anyway, now this craft in particular was stationary, was parked, and the 2 reptilian beings were kind of standing one on opposite side to each other, and there was an SS officer they were talking with, and then he said after a few minutes of watching, another one had flown in and landed, and he said the really cool thing about it was you couldn't hear anything. Unlike the
Completely
typical
silent.
aircraft, yeah, unlike the typical aircraft of the time where they had big engines and you could hear them coming from miles away, especially because a lot of them flew in fleets. There was a whole pile of aircraft, so you could definitely hear them coming miles away. But he said this craft had no sound, and
I bet it was like smooth as well, like the way it was moving.
yes, correct. And he said it would make really sporadic movements, like he could turn on a
Zigzag.
dime and just like up and down like super fast, and it was crazy. So
Yep.
they just kind of sat and watched this for a little bit, and then they took off, and that was the end of that. So they really relayed that information back to HQ, I guess. And yeah, so that was really interesting. And I didn't really
Very.
100% believe him until I heard the William Tompkins story, because William Tompkins kind of confirmed a lot of what my grandfather had said, so it solidified that in my mind. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It's really, really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know, the Nazis were already on the moon pre-World War. They were already on the moon like 1942.
Way before Apollo.
Yeah, Lunar Alpha Command is basically a space station that's up there on the moon, and it's shaped like a swastika, and it's still there today, but you can't make it out as well because they've added to it, so it's kind of more squarish than it is shaped in a swastika like originally it was intended.
Yeah.
And once we get disclosure, people are going to see that, and it's going to be really interesting. And they were also on Mars. They have colonies on Mars and things like that. pretty much throughout the galaxy, and not only our galaxy. You know, we got colonies on Ceres and, man, you name it, Andromeda sector too. You know, really cool
Everywhere.
stuff.
Every
So
planet is colonized.
I wouldn't say every planet, you know,
Well,
because there's
of
so
course
many,
not
there's
the
trillions of
inhabitable
planets
ones.
out there, you know,
Yeah.
right? But nonetheless, I mean, the technology the Nazis had developed or had gotten their hands on during the Second World War definitely changed the way we live today. But even prior to that, I mean, we had guys like Tesla, Nikolai Tesla, and Marconi. You know, they were already changing things back in 1900. You know, we had trains
Oh
and
yeah.
radio and TV were starting to come out. Um,
Revolutionary tech.
yeah, coincidentally enough, the Nazis heavily used propaganda
Oh yeah.
to get people to
To
their
believe what.
shift people's thinking to their side, right? And we still
Yeah.
see that in the media today. I mean, Jesus, you know, you get so many media
It's
outlets calling
everywhere.
the Biden win when it's actually not even remotely true. You know,
Not
so
even close.
it's kind of nuts, right? Um, Now, after the war, after the Allies, you know, reportedly went in there to kick their ass, and that was the end of story. Um, that's really not the end of story.
No.
What the Allies kind of started realizing after that, after they had, you know, taken over and they had troops on the ground in there, and General Forrestal or Admiral Forrestal had gone in there and started looking at some of the research facilities along with JFK. He was along for the ride sometimes. Um, they really became interested in the technological development of the Nazis, and they wanted to bring it to the U.S. So,
That's where you get
1945,
Operation Paperclip from.
correct, but it wasn't actually originally called Operation Paperclip. It was actually originally called Operation Overcast and just got renamed.
Right.
And that came to be because they were also afraid that the Russians were going to get hold of some of this technology and use it against them and the world as well, which was a big problem. I mean, that's basically why we had the Cold War,
Yeah.
right? It was because of that. So there's a really good book out there I'd like to for everybody to read if you've got time and you enjoy reading. It's from the author Annie Jacobson, and it's called Operation Paperclip. Excellent read. She also has a couple of YouTube videos out there from various people, which are a really good watch as well. So I highly recommend that. But it was Operation Paperclip was a classified military program
Yeah.
where the U.S. wanted to bring in the top weapon scientists, top medical scientists, but also not only that, but people involved in politics and journalism as well. And I should point out that every single one of them were guilty of crimes against humanity, war crimes, you know, lots of trash. And the general
Stupid shit.
consensus, what's that?
Stupid shit.
Yeah. And the general consensus within the US at the time was that why would we want to bring these like nasty, nasty people into our country? You know, it didn't make any
Knowledge.
sense. Like these people should be like given the death penalty or something or jail for life, right?
Yeah.
But yet, you know, the US military ended up bringing them in. But that in itself wasn't done through the good guys. It was done through being forced to do so because it brings into play the 1952 DC flyover, which a lot of people thought was extraterrestrial UFOs, but it actually was not. It was actually Nazi craft, and the Nazis had a base that they started building out during pre World War II in Antarctica. They had
Right.
sub bases there. They'd go in with their U-boats and stuff, and and the Dracos have a big base there too, which is why you don't really see that kind of stuff because it's at the opposite end of the friggin' planet,
Yep.
right?
And
So
under the ice.
yeah, I mean you can catch a couple of things on Google Earth. There's a couple of locations you can look up there. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but give you a good little research for someday. And so
Yep.
they kind of moved all their technology down there, and they had a like a spaceport there. They could take off and go to the moon from there or wherever they wanted to go. So they basically forced the U.S. into submission, into accepting them into the current state of things, and that's why Operation Paperclip came to be, because it was all these bad Nazi guys coming over, infiltrating pretty much every sector of the government. You know, not only military, but politics and journalism as well, as I had said. So that's really when the subjugation of the U.S. and the planet started on a mass scale. You know, these same guys were the ones that assassinated John F. Kennedy. Same guys that put out the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan. Um, and they have
Just
tried,
one big organization.
yeah, they've tried 25 times to kill Trump, and it still hasn't worked yet, and it's not going to work. But
He's
anyway, so, you know, some of these
impenetrable.
guys, what's that?
He's impenetrable.
Yeah, he's protected by God, so they ain't getting to him. Anyway, so like some of the scientists that they had brought over initially, one of the guys was Walter Schreiber. He was the Surgeon General of the Third Reich, and at the time he was working on medicine to help protect the Nazis, I guess, from chemical or biological warfare, but also to enhance their capabilities physically, whether it be
Oh?
stronger, faster, possibly more intelligent, or maybe all those things too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now they brought him into the U.S. Now, initially, you know, the general consensus with Operation Paperclip was that they only had brought in like maybe 100 of these people, which is wrong. They brought in, I think it was about 3,600 or so in that area altogether, which
Yeah.
is a stunning amount, you know.
I think there was like 6,000 families taken away as well
Taken away?
during that. Yeah, during that time.
How do you mean?
Give me a second here. I have it up. Doo-doo-doo. Okay, so a total of more than 6,000 people, including family members, with Operation Ozav Ozaviakim during one night of October 22nd, 1946.
Interesting.
There you
Crazy.
go.
So there you go. So yeah. So actually, I didn't think it was that much, but I guess if you include their families too, that would kind of make up for the other half.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Cool. So yeah. So Walter Schreiber was actually sent to Texas to work on this similar type of thing here in the U.S. And that's where he stayed basically till he died. I believe he died in 1999,
99?
about 21 years ago. Yep.
Shit.
And then, but the more common name that people would know is Werner von Braun. And when he was with the Third Reich, he was part of the rocket program. And so when he came over to the U.S., they put him as the head of the NASA rocket program. Right? And
Yeah.
he had brought basically his whole crew with him when he did that, which was 160 Nazis at the time. So 117 Nazis just for the rocket program itself at NASA, which is pretty crazy.
Same.
You know, and he was one of the individuals that helped the U.S. get to the moon and back. Coincidentally enough, too, William Tompkins was involved in designing the Apollo program, which not only was originally written to go to the moon, but out into the galaxy and beyond as well, which is pretty interesting. You'll find that out if you watch some of his interviews. So, um, you know, I guess one of the other things the Americans had developed with Nazi help was the atomic bomb, which and ended World War II with the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Oh, did
Right?
you see the? I think it was just released. Russia just released a video of them launching to SAR and the explosion.
No way.
Yeah, it was. I don't know when, but it's an old photo or not photo. Video.
Interesting. Interesting. I'll have to
You can
check
check
that
that
out,
out
dude.
on YouTube.
For
Yep.
sure. For sure. I'll look that up. So yeah, so that was basically Operation Paperclip in a nutshell. There's finer details and a lot more of the finer details, but I encourage people to read Annie Jacobson's book or go watch some YouTube stuff on it. There's probably other websites as well around the interwebs that you can go check that out. But definitely a turning point in history, and maybe something a lot of people don't know about. Um, the 2-season TV series Project Blue Book actually had that in their series, which is really interesting because the Germans had basically like this their own town that looked like a German town, authentic German town, which was pretty odd too for the time. But yeah, definitely go out and do your research on that topic. Um, I
Worth your
personally,
time.
yeah, it's definitely worth your time. Knowledge is power. You know what I mean?
Knowledge is power. Knowledge and
So
honesty.
that's right. That's right. Always be honest. Always be honest.
That's right.
So that's it for today's episode.
Not too
Um,
bad.
yeah. So this week, for future episodes, I have coming up an interview Friday or Saturday. I can't remember which day yet. But I'm going to be talking with Amina and Norman Traversy. If you don't know who those people are, Norman is the one who filed the Chapter 27 violation against Trudeau and some other people in the political arena in Canada. Uh, and the Chapter 27 is an anti corruption mandate within the USMCA agreement that Trudeau did sign off on. And on Canada Today this past year, Norman hand delivered to the U.S. Embassy here in Ottawa and the Mexican Embassy in Ottawa all the documentation to get that ball rolling. So
Right.
there are a couple other individuals that have tried to get Trudeau in court over his violations, his criminal activity. Tom Quiggin is one of them, but Norman and Tom have both been locked out of the courtroom
Oh,
because,
really?
yeah, I kind of mentioned in our first podcast that our Department of Justice is corrupt, and I
Oh,
kid
yeah.
you not. So I'll be talking to those guys about things that I've dug up over the years through my process in court and what I've
Just through the
learned.
Canadian government?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, because American law is slightly different
Yeah.
than Canadian. The only countries that have similar law, like Canada, would be United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand. Those are the three big ones.
All
Okay.
right.
So yeah, I'll be talking to them about that and my experiences in court. So look out for that one. Should be a really good interview. I look forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
Calvin, any last words before we sign off for the day?
Just make sure you guys have a great night or day wherever you are. Make sure you subscribe, leave a like, comment down below, say what you say about say what you think about the channel, what you think about the upcoming schedule and what they're going to be talking about in their interview.
Yeah, always leave a
You-
comment, whether positive or negative.
Yep, exactly.
Right? We won't
And
if we're not getting negative comments, we aren't doing our job properly.
Exactly.
Right? It's just part of the
Exactly.
process, you know what I mean? You always get trolls or whatever, but that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you have suggestions too, we wouldn't mind some suggestions. Like we said at the beginning of today's podcast, or did we mention this already
What is it?
about segmenting the podcast?
I believe so.
Okay, so yeah, we are going to be taking the. If we have a very lengthy podcast, again, we're going to be cutting it down into segments. So if we cover multiple topics in 1 hour or whatever it is, we'll try and cut it down to like 15-minute, 4 segments.
Yeah.
All right, but we won't be able to do that for every one of them because like today's we've basically covered one topic, so it's kind of hard to do it like that. And
Exactly.
Calvin and I just both purchased high def cameras for our computer, and so hopefully within the next week or two, you'll be able to see us online. We did
Which will
try
be
filming
great.
with. Sorry.
Which will be awesome.
Oh, totally, dude, totally, man. We
Right.
did try using our the cameras on our phones hooked up to our computers through Wi-Fi, but we found that because Calvin and I are talking through Discord, there was a 15 to 20-second lag between our lips and the actual audio coming through, and we didn't feel that was right, especially starting up our channel.
Yeah.
So this is why we decided just to do audio until we got some money together to get some web cameras. So now that that's happened, it shouldn't be very long before we can get some actual pictures of ourselves up there,
Yeah, exactly.
right? So
Finally.
yeah, so that's it for you, Calvin.
Just make sure you turn on your notifications so you get the next so you get the next video as soon as possible. Check up on us, whatever.
Yep, subscribe to us too if you like what we have to say.
Yep, yep.
Currently, we're just going to be doing one a week, unless we segment it. If we segment it, we'll release each of those segments one a day.
Yeah.
So
So throughout the week from Monday to Friday.
yeah, I mean, eventually maybe we will do multiple episodes a week, but for now, Calvin works part time and goes to school full time, so he only has so much time on his hands. And
Yeah,
like I said, I'm on
exactly.
night shift, so it kind of I'm left to the
Sucks.
weekend to do a recording. So
Yeah.
that's it. Peace out.
Alrighty. See